Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm senior editor Denton Davidson here with Emmy-nominated makeup designer Carol Rasheed, who is the makeup department head for Blitz Bazawule's The Color Purple. Carol, first of all, I just want to congratulate you on your very recent Critics' Choice nomination. That was
Oh,
some good news to kick off the day.
that is awesome. Thank you so much, Denton. I'm excited about that.
I mean, what's it like to have that sort of reception and being honored for your work by, critics groups, and you've had the Emmy nomination before from your peers. What does it feel like?
It really does feel surreal. I've been working in the industry for a very long time, and to be honest with you, I've never done it for awards. I never even thought about awards, to be perfectly honest with you, but it really does feel good to know that people appreciate what you've done and the heart that you put into it. So I'm excited from that perspective.
Well, let's get into the film. First of all, what were your thoughts when you heard the classic novel, movie, and Broadway show were going to be adapted into this new musical film? And was it your previous experience with Oprah that brought you on, or what connected you?
I think it was a accumulation of a lot of things. I like to say that it was just divine, honestly. My agent was the first person that actually came to me in regards to The Color Purple and asked me if I was interested, and I was like, sure. And then she put me up for it, and of course, I was put up for it. Ended up having an interview with Blitz, one of, I think, many interviews that I had with Blitz. And it really, my agent kept saying, "Oh, they're interested, they're interested," and and they want to, she kept saying they're interested, they're interested. But it went from 1 month, 2 months to I think it was about 6 months later. I was literally in the process of negotiating a different show. At the time when my agent called me and she said, "Carol, they want you for The Color Purple," but this is after I had had a couple interviews, and so I thought they had chosen someone else.
What were those
What was
initial
that?
what were those initial discussions like with Blitz then? To talk about the themes of what his vision was for this movie.
Well, his vision was for the movie, and in the discussions with me, when we initial interview that I had, he talked about The Color Purple, and what he wanted to see for The Color Purple in terms of the characters and his thought process of how he wanted us to look, basically, representing, Black people, how our skin ages, how we look on camera in terms of not masking anything. And that was perfect for me because the type of makeup that I'm known for is doing beautiful skin makeup, making us look, making the character look more like themselves if it is something where it's not requiring prosthetic pieces or what have you. So it was right down my line. He gave his input in terms of what he wanted. I came back to him with images. I did some boards for him, put some music, some Color Purple music behind the board to show him my thoughts in terms of the main four characters, which was Celie, Suge, Mr. and Sophia. And he loved what I brought back to him. We looked at, lip colors and, and just how they would progressively age. So initially, that wasn't the first interview that I had, but the second interview, that I had as we moved on through the process, that is what I think really helped seal the deal with him.
Talk about makeup of that era, and which must have been quite different, of course, than what we see today. Especially what Black women in the South were wearing at that time in the early 19 to mid 1900s. Talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so it in the early 1900s, it kind of varied. You have somebody like a Suge's character back in that times that were wearing reds, and and that was considered kind of to be a loose woman type thing back in that day. And so then I had to think about that, and then think about bringing it up to a current situation within the new reimagined Color Purple. The thing that most people did not have back in the 1900s were tattoos. On this film, there were hundreds of tattoos. I mean, hundreds of tattoos, on our background and on some of our main characters as well, that we had to really grapple with, figuring out. I had to grapple with figuring out how I was going to effectively be able to cover all these hundreds of tattoos daily. So needless to say, I came up with a great game plan for that. In terms of the product, you didn't have tattoos back in the day. You didn't have nose piercings, and some people didn't hardly have ear piercings. So those are all the things that went into also part of my, research and planning, is how were we going to effectively be able to make sure that all those things were concealed.
And Suge is the glamorous one. She comes out looking like
Suge was the glamorous one, but then we have Miss Celie that ended up, specifically through the fantasy parts in the movie, where I got an opportunity to, try lip colors on her. And let me tell you, I went through so many iterations of lip colors, just mixing, trying to get the right color of red or the right shade of red for her. My goal was to make sure that all the women in the movie had a different shade of red. No two women had on the same red. So specifically for Fantasia, I wanted to make sure her lipstick didn't look like Suge's lipstick. I wanted to make sure Suge's lipstick didn't look like Sophia's lipstick. So as you can imagine, for each individual person, I had to really think about how I wanted to approach that.
and that's really an awakening for Celie. I mean, it gives her confidence. I mean, the
It,
makeup is a character.
Absolutely. It gave her confidence. It gave her a spirit of feeling better about who she was, as an individual, and it really empowered her. So particularly in the scene when, at one point, Suge puts a lipstick on Celie's character, and that is the only time where they have on a lipstick that's very similar that she's putting on her. Of course, I provided the lipstick color, that was close to what Suge was wearing for her to match that color, when she looks at herself in the mirror. So yeah, makeup is an interesting thing that I think people really, some of the comments that I've been getting from this movie is that the melanin in the skin is really popping in this movie. I've gotten so many compliments about how the skin looks. I've gotten a lot of compliments about how the aging looks too. One of the things that Blitz was very clear to me on was that he wanted our skin to age like Black skin basically ages. It's not dramatic, so the aging process and the aging on the characters was subtle, right? So, I think about something like myself. I'm in my 60s, but I've aged, pretty, you know what I mean? I'm gracefully aging, if I may say so myself. But, so that was an important thing. He wanted to see that skin, wanted to see aging that really mimicked how, most people, melanated people will age.
And it's natural for people to be drawn to women when we think of makeup, but talk about the intricacies of working with Coleman and on Mr. and the men in this film and the work you had to do on them.
Oh God, yes. I think about somebody like Coleman, in the beginning of the movie, Coleman was, probably a little bit more handsome than we really want to admit at the beginning of this movie. So, in that process with him, I just really made sure that his skin was smooth and beautiful. And I added sheen to most everybody's skin just to give that real nice glow to the skin. But his character went through a process. He went from the beginning of when he showed up with this big cowboy hat and his, overalls and everything, and then, looking kind of crisp and clean. And as time went on, as the movie progresses on, where he's, having trials and tribulations of his own, and he's having a reawakening of not being the bad person, but trying to be a better human being. But as he aged, like there are one scene in there where I know that he had to, he got drunk in the movie, and then, he had an overnight thing where he couldn't, where he supposedly had not gotten an opportunity to shave. So we had to think about, I had to think about looking at him and determining, okay, I need to at least give him like maybe a 1 day growth of hair on his face. So I had to hand lay hair for that. And then we had a situation to where it was a week growths of hair. I had to hand lay facial hair for that. And there are times throughout the movie where I had to distress him, darken under his eyes, put blotchiness on his skin, in an effort to aid in the character building with that. And I think all the characters, went through that, specifically Coleman and Fantasia. I think at one point she gets into, he slaps her in the movie. There are certain things that have happened, throughout the thread of the movie, where makeup really did take a front seat in terms of helping to convey what needed to be conveyed, imagery wise, without taking away from the film. That was really the important thing too for me as a leader, to make sure that we were representing, all the characters in a light that we would want to be seen in.
And one character who has sort of a dramatic change in my mind was Sophia, because she gets beaten down, and so she was never the glamorous one, but she goes through, this abuse and traumatic experience. So what did you have to do to change Danielle Brooks's appearance at that point?
Very early on, some of the images, like I submitted again as part of my boards to Blitz, our director, in terms of what I thought that she would look like. I know that from the original movie, she gets a black eye. And this time in this particular movie, I stepped it up a little bit, without her just, it was more than just having a black eye per se. Like, Blitz was very clear that he really, didn't want any swelling too much around the eyes. So I had to determine, okay, if we don't want swelling, we've got to show some type of blood effect or some type of blunt trauma to the face or to the head. And how we ended up doing that. And that's why you were asking me earlier about the face casting that we did for her. We had to do a live cast for her, because I wanted to have pieces made specifically for her brow area and her eye area, to show when she was beat. It was a few stages that she had to go through. She got beat initially, then she went to prison. And then, and she had her time in prison, where we see it a couple days later, where her brow, she still has, a little bit of blood up there. Her eye is bloodshot. I had to have certain contacts made specifically for that. So, I pulled images to get Blitz approval on all of that stuff. He signed off on certain things, and that's what ended up happening. So we went from when she got beat, where we had to bruise her all up, visually, for you to be able to see the redness and stuff around her face. And then we went on to, we initially started out with using a little prosthetic piece. However, we kind of determined after trying to use that piece that it wouldn't work. So we ended up hand painting the actual piece. We ended up hand painting the scar, that we had to use on her. So went from that to being able to use two different contact lenses. We used one for the bloodshotness in her eye, and then later on in the movie, when she's healed up, right, she still is going to have some remnants of what happened with that fighting. So again, everything was kind of hand painted. I had a great team. I really did. Ngazi Alongo Young really was out there as well, helping. So it was a lot. Her character went through the most change. Sophia's did,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
And you were so inspired by the film, you just launched a whole lipstick line.
I did. Well, you know what happened? I remember the day when we initially started, and I was thinking to myself, how am I going to approach this? one of the things that I really wanted to make sure of, like I said earlier, I didn't want any of the women to have the same red shade of red. I think that, there are certain types of reds that you can have that can create a mood, right? Like I have on a blue red lipstick today, which is very reminiscent of what I used, a color that I used similar on to Fantasia. But I was really just mixing colors, just trying to come up with something. And the thing about it is, Denton, is that I wanted to pay homage to these women. I wanted to pay homage to this iconic film. And I thought, what better way than to do it, than to create something that can help uplift women, and that's how I really came up with the name of my brand. It's called The Evolution of Rouge. And the evolution of Rouge takes place in a time frame. When you think about the evolution and you think about lipsticks used to be called rouge back in the 20s, and the blush used to be called that as well. So that is what inspired me to do it. And the thread also throughout the movie, when you're watching the movie, it gives you inspiration. It certainly did for me. You look at the women in the movie, and it speaks to the women being resilient. Particularly a character like Sophia, she was resilient throughout the entire process of her going from being the one, talking about Harpo beating her and just showing the resilience that I think that we all as women can relate to. Also, hope was another thing in terms of watching the movie, right? It provided hope. Celie had hope, in her heart eventually, in terms of just coming through the things that she came through. So I really wanted to have affirming names associated with the lipsticks, just as a reminder for us as women that we all should have inspiration, hope, and resilience.
Wow. Well, Carol, congratulations once again on the Critics' Choice nomination. Best of
Thank
luck to
you.
you and the entire cast and crew for the upcoming awards season. And thanks for sitting down with Gold Derby today to talk about The Color Purple.
Thank you, Denton. I really appreciate it so much.